For centuries, Rome would rise to become the beating heart of the ancient world, a center of power whose influence stretched across continents. Yet its beginnings were so humble that no one living in its early days could have imagined what the small settlements on the Tiber River would one day become. Before the marble temples and triumphal arches, before the legions marched across distant landscapes, Rome existed only as a scattering of simple huts perched on steep hills overlooking a slow-flowing river. These hills were not just physical features but the earliest foundations of an identity. They offered protection, vantage points, and fertile land nearby. People lived there long before anyone called it Rome, farming, herding animals, and trading with neighboring tribes who moved up and down the Italian peninsula. Later Romans looked back on these modest origins and wrapped them in a tale of divine drama. According to legend, two infant brothers, Romulus and Remus, were born from a union between a Trojan descendant and Mars himself, god of war. Their story was crafted to give Rome an origin worthy of the great power it would one day become. As the myth goes, the twins were cast into the Tiber by enemies who feared their destiny, left to die in the river's currents. Instead of drowning, they were carried to the riverbank where a she-wolf discovered them. The creature, fierce and protective, nursed the crying infants and kept them alive until a shepherd named Faustulus found them and raised them as his own sons. Growing up strong and bold, the brothers dreamed of founding a new city. When a dispute over its location and leadership escalated, the argument became fatal. Romulus struck down Remus, and in victory stood alone as the founder. On April 21st in the year 753 BCE, he established the city that would forever carry his name. The tale of fraternal rivalry, divine ancestry, and miraculous survival became a pillar of Roman identity, symbolizing both ambition and sacrifice. The actual historical beginnings were, of course, more grounded. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of small Iron Age villages on the Seven Hills long before that legendary date. These early inhabitants built round huts of wood and thatch, tended herds, and farmed the fertile volcanic soil of the region. The hills provided natural fortification, and the Tiber River served as a lifeline for trade. Merchants carrying goods between Etruscan lands to the north and Greek colonies to the south often passed through the area, turning the settlement into a crossroads of culture and commerce. Over generations, as families grew and communities expanded, these small villages began to merge. Shared rituals, trading needs, and defensive cooperation encouraged unity. What began as separate hilltop settlements gradually joined into one interconnected community, laying the earliest foundations of Rome. As the city developed, it entered the era known as the time of the kings. Tradition speaks of 7 rulers who guided Rome during its first centuries. Though history mixes with legend in their stories, each king was credited with shaping an essential piece of Roman society. Romulus was remembered as the creator of Rome's first political and military institutions, including the early Senate and the basic structure of the citizen army. Numa Pompilius, who followed him, was said to have introduced religious customs and rituals that would bind the community together. Later kings organized public works, established city walls, and encouraged trade. Some of these rulers were Etruscan leaders from the sophisticated civilization to the north. Under their influence, Rome adopted engineering techniques, artistic styles, and improvements in urban planning. The early Romans learned from their neighbors, absorbing elements of Etruscan technology, architecture, and culture while shaping their own identity. Daily life during this period mixed simplicity with growing ambition. Farmers tended fields outside the city, while traders bartered goods in the markets that grew near the riverbanks. Religious ceremonies filled the calendar, honoring household gods and protective deities. Families gathered for festivals and games that strengthened community bonds. The kings oversaw disputes, directed the military, and managed construction projects that gradually turned the small settlements into a true city. With every passing decade, Rome expanded in size and population. Defensive fortifications grew stronger. Roads stretched farther from the hills into the surrounding countryside. New alliances were forged with neighboring tribes. Little by little, Rome shifted from a collection of villages into a rising regional power. But the monarchy that guided Rome's earliest growth eventually faced problems. Power rested in the hands of a single ruler, and over time this posed risks. The last king, Tarquin the Proud, became notorious for cruelty, arrogance, and abuses committed by his family. His harsh rule sparked resentment among the city's leading families and ordinary citizens alike. A final outrage triggered an uprising led by Lucius Junius Brutus, a noble determined to end the tyranny. Joined by angry Romans, Brutus forced Tarquin and his relatives into exile. This moment in 509 BCE became a turning point in Roman history. The people vowed never again to submit to the authority of a king. They believed that the concentration of power in one pair of hands had nearly destroyed the city. Determined to build something stronger and fairer, they created a new system unlike anything around them. The Romans designed a republic, a political structure they called the residential publica, the public thing. Instead of kings, they chose 2 consuls, elected for 1 year, who shared power equally. These consuls worked alongside the Senate, an assembly of elders drawn from influential families who advised and guided policy. Each part of the system checked the others, preventing any one person from dominating the state. In their eyes, this balance would protect Rome from tyranny and unify it through shared responsibility. The creation of the Republic did more than remove a king. It redirected the course of Roman civilization. It challenged the city to grow not by the will of one ruler but through a structured collaboration of leaders, citizens, and soldiers. And in doing so, it set Rome on a new path, one that would eventually lead it from a small community on the Tiber to the commanding power of the entire Mediterranean world. The rise of the Republic marked the true beginning of Rome's extraordinary journey, a journey fueled by ambition, resilience, and an unwavering belief that its people were destined for greatness. The transformation from a monarchy to a republic set Rome on a path that no ancient city had walked before. With kings gone forever, the Romans now placed their fate in the hands of elected officials and a system designed to avoid tyranny. Yet this political experiment did not grant the city peace. Instead, the early republic was forged in the crucible of continuous warfare. Rome found itself surrounded by rival tribes and neighboring powers who viewed its growing unity with suspicion. The Latins, Etruscans, Samnites, and other Italian peoples challenged Roman authority again and again. Rather than retreat, Rome developed a remarkable capacity for endurance. Every defeat only hardened its resolve. Every victory expanded its influence. Slowly, the Republic became a formidable military machine whose legions operated with unmatched discipline and organization. By the middle of the 3rd century BCE, Rome had asserted control over the entire Italian peninsula. But conquest on land was only the first chapter. A greater challenge awaited across the sea. The western Mediterranean was dominated by Carthage, a wealthy maritime empire founded by Phoenician settlers. With thriving ports, expert sailors, and vast trade routes stretching from Spain to North Africa, Carthage controlled the sea lanes that connected distant markets. Tension grew as Roman influence spread southward and eastward. Both powers understood that the Mediterranean could not accommodate 2 rising giants. Their collision erupted into the Punic Wars, the longest and most decisive struggle of the ancient world. The First Punic War centered on the island of Sicily. Carthage had long controlled its coastal regions, while Roman allies lived inland. When conflict began, Rome faced a nearly impossible disadvantage. Its soldiers were unmatched on land, but Rome had no navy capable of challenging the Carthaginian fleets. Instead of accepting defeat, the Republic undertook an astonishing effort. Using a captured enemy vessel as a blueprint, Roman craftsmen constructed a massive fleet from scratch. To compensate for their inexperience at sea, the Romans created the corvus, a heavy boarding device that transformed naval engagements into land battles. The corvus clamped onto enemy ships, allowing Roman soldiers to storm aboard and fight in the environment they knew best. After 2 decades of grueling combat, Rome achieved victory. Sicily became its first overseas province, and the Republic realized it was no longer merely a regional power. It had become a Mediterranean force. But peace between Rome and Carthage was fragile. The defeat humiliated Carthage and pushed it to rebuild its influence abroad, especially in Spain. There a brilliant Carthaginian commander emerged. Hannibal Barca, the son of a respected general, was raised with a fierce hatred for Rome. According to tradition, he swore as a child to oppose the Republic for as long as he lived. When the Second Punic War erupted, Hannibal executed one of the most daring military maneuvers in history. Leading an army that included cavalry, infantry, and imposing war elephants, he marched from Spain across the Pyrenees, through southern Gaul, and over the frozen peaks of the Alps. Many soldiers and animals were lost, but the fact that he emerged in Italy with a fighting force stunned the ancient world. For more than 15 years Hannibal devastated Roman armies. His strategic genius was unmatched. His victory at Cannae in 216 BCE became legendary. Using a double envelopment tactic, he encircled a Roman force nearly twice his size and destroyed it almost entirely. Panic swept across the Republic. Cities wavered in their loyalty. Allies considered switching sides. Yet Rome did not break. The Senate refused any negotiations. It raised new armies, recruited younger soldiers, and embraced Fabian tactics which involved avoiding direct confrontation and harassing Hannibal's forces instead. Carthage, meanwhile, failed to provide Hannibal with the reinforcements needed for a decisive victory. Eventually Rome found its answer to Hannibal in a rising general named Publius Cornelius Scipio. He understood that Hannibal would never abandon Italy unless forced to defend Carthage itself. Taking his army to North Africa, Scipio threatened Carthage's homeland. Hannibal returned to defend his city and met Scipio at the Battle of Zama in 202 BCE. There he suffered his only major defeat. Rome emerged triumphant, and Carthage was reduced to a weakened state stripped of power and dignity. Still, the Romans did not forget the terror Hannibal had brought to their land. Half a century later Rome launched the Third Punic War, driven partly by fear and partly by political ambition. The war ended with the utter destruction of Carthage in 146 BCE. The once great city was burned and its lands annexed. Rome now commanded the Mediterranean world. The Republic expanded rapidly into Greece and the Eastern kingdoms. But with this expansion came internal tension. Wealth poured into Rome's elite families, inequalities grew, and the republican system began to strain under the weight of ruling distant provinces. The conquests that made Rome powerful also planted the seeds of its own turmoil. Rome entered the 1st century BCE filled with power yet fractured by internal conflict. Victories abroad had enriched the aristocracy, while ordinary Romans struggled with poverty and displacement. Landowners consolidated farms into large estates run by slaves, leaving countless small farmers unemployed. Riots grew common. Political offices became the battlegrounds of rival factions. Reformers tried to address inequality but were met with resistance from elites who feared losing their influence. Violence seeped into the political sphere. Assassinations became tools of policy. The Republic strained under the pressure of governing a vast empire with institutions designed for a small city-state. Amid this chaos emerged a group of influential figures determined to gather power through cooperation. Julius Caesar joined forces with Crassus, the wealthiest man in Rome, and Pompey the Great, a celebrated general with tremendous military prestige. Their informal alliance, later called the First Triumvirate, allowed them to dominate Roman politics. Caesar secured a vital assignment as governor of Gaul. Crassus obtained important financial privileges. Pompey received confirmation of his eastern arrangements. While the alliance benefited each man, it also destabilized the Republic's delicate balance of power. Caesar's time in Gaul transformed him from a skillful politician into a legendary commander. For 8 relentless years he led campaigns against tribes across the region. His victories expanded Roman territory to the Atlantic and brought him immense wealth. His soldiers adored him for his leadership and shared hardships. His rising popularity worried many senators who feared he might become another king. Tension between Caesar and Pompey intensified as the two men drifted apart. After Crassus died in battle, their alliance dissolved, leaving only rivalry. The Senate, leaning toward Pompey, issued an order demanding Caesar dismiss his army and return to Rome. Caesar understood that if he returned without his troops he would be vulnerable to prosecution and political ruin. Standing at the banks of the Rubicon River, he faced a choice that would determine Rome's future. In 49 BCE he led his legions across the river, defying the Senate and igniting civil war. His march forced Pompey and many senators to flee. Caesar pursued them across Greece and the eastern Mediterranean. Victory followed victory until Pompey was ultimately killed in Egypt. Caesar returned to Rome as the unchallenged ruler. The Senate, intimidated by his power, granted him extraordinary titles including dictator for life. Caesar used his authority to initiate reforms. He reorganized provincial administration, adjusted the calendar, expanded citizenship rights, and attempted to relieve economic distress. Yet many believed his power threatened the very essence of the republic. Fearing he intended to crown himself king, a group of senators plotted to kill him. On the Ides of March in 44 BCE, they attacked him during a Senate session. Caesar fell beneath their blades believing he had restored order, only for his death to plunge the republic into deeper chaos. Rome descended into another cycle of civil wars. Caesar's assassins, calling themselves liberators, were soon hunted down by forces loyal to Caesar's memory. The struggle shifted to his heir Octavian and his loyal ally Mark Antony. They initially shared power, forming the Second Triumvirate, but their cooperation dissolved under ambition and mistrust. Antony's relationship with Cleopatra fueled scandal and provided Octavian with a chance to portray him as disloyal to Rome. Their rivalry culminated at the naval battle of Actium in 31 BCE. Octavian's forces emerged victorious. Antony and Cleopatra retreated to Egypt where they ended their lives. Rome once again had a single ruler. With his rivals gone, Octavian held unparalleled power. Yet he understood the fate of Julius Caesar and carefully avoided the appearance of monarchy. In 27 BCE, he offered to relinquish authority. In return, the Senate granted him new powers and the revered title Augustus. The Republic still existed in name, but true power rested in his hands. Augustus became Rome's first emperor. His reign closed the turbulent era of civil war and opened the age of the Roman Empire. Augustus inherited a fractured world and set about restoring stability. He reformed the military, creating a professional standing army loyal to the state rather than individual generals. He established the Praetorian Guard to protect the emperor. He improved tax collection, built roads, restored temples, and expanded the city with grand monuments. Rome transformed from a city scarred by decades of war into a glittering capital of marble, sculpture, and order. These reforms ushered in the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, a period of stability lasting nearly 200 years. During this era, the empire expanded to its greatest territorial extent. Under Emperor Claudius, Roman legions crossed the English Channel and began the conquest of Britain. Vespasian and his sons, Titus and Domitian, rebuilt Rome's public spaces and constructed the Grand Colosseum where thousands gathered to watch games, reenactments, and displays of imperial power. The empire stretched across 3 continents. In the north, it reached the cold windswept frontiers of Britain and the forests of Germania. In the east, it pushed deep into the lands of Syria and Mesopotamia. In the south, it extended across North Africa from the Atlantic to the Nile. The height of the empire came during the reign of the 5 good emperors. Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius were chosen for their ability rather than lineage. Their rule brought prosperity, intellectual growth, and administrative reform. Trajan expanded Roman borders farther than ever, bringing Dacia, Arabia, and new eastern territories into the empire. Hadrian, recognizing the challenges of defending such vast lands, shifted focus to consolidation. He traveled across the empire, inspecting fortifications and improving defenses. His most famous project, Hadrian's Wall, marked the northern boundary of Roman Britain. The emperor believed in shaping the empire's borders into a manageable form that could be protected rather than endlessly expanding. Inside the empire, daily life flourished. Roads linked distant provinces to the capital. Merchants transported goods like olive oil, wine, grain, metal, glass, and exotic spices across thousands of miles. Aqueducts brought clean water into cities, feeding fountains, baths, and homes. Public buildings such as theaters, amphitheaters, and markets expressed Roman civic pride. A shared legal system governed millions of people, offering rights and protections that influenced later civilizations. Latin and Greek became languages of administration and culture. Literature, philosophy, and science grew under imperial patronage. Yet beneath this golden age cracks began to form. The later years of Marcus Aurelius brought challenges that tested the empire's resilience. Germanic tribes pushed against the northern borders. A devastating plague, possibly smallpox, swept through cities and legions, weakening the empire's manpower and economy. When Marcus Aurelius died in 180 CE, he left the empire to his son Commodus, whose erratic and self-indulgent rule marked a sharp break from the competence of his predecessors. Commodus' mismanagement, vanity, and cruelty unsettled Rome. His assassination signaled the end of the Pax Romana. After Commodus, Rome spiraled into turmoil. The 3rd century became one of the most violent and unstable periods in its history. Emperors came and went in rapid succession. Many were proclaimed by armies that soon abandoned them. Some ruled only months before being overthrown or assassinated. The empire fractured as rival claimants fought for supremacy. While Roman soldiers battled one another, external enemies took advantage. Germanic tribes crossed weakened frontiers. In the east, the resurgent Persian Empire launched devastating campaigns capturing Roman cities and defeating Roman armies. The capture of Emperor Valerian by the Persians marked a humiliation that shocked the Roman world. Inflation ravaged the economy as emperors minted coins with less silver to pay restless troops. Trade dwindled. Cities contracted. Provinces threatened to break away. Disease continued to weaken the population. For a time it seemed the empire was on the verge of total collapse. Yet Rome was not finished. A succession of capable military emperors from the Danube region took control and began restoring order. Among them rose Diocletian, a ruler determined to save the empire through radical reform. Diocletian realized that one man could not govern such vast lands effectively. He reorganized the empire into 2 halves, Eastern and Western, each ruled by its own emperor. Later he expanded this arrangement into a tetrarchy, a system with 2 senior emperors and 2 junior emperors. This structure aimed to provide stability, better frontier defense, and a clear line of succession. Diocletian strengthened administrative control, reformed taxation, and attempted to stabilize the economy. For a time his efforts succeeded. But the unity he created faded after his retirement. From the chaos rose another pivotal figure, Constantine. Through a series of civil wars, Constantine defeated rival emperors and reunited the empire. Before one decisive battle, he reportedly saw a Christian symbol in the sky, accompanied by a message urging him to fight under this sign. Victorious, he embraced Christianity and ended the long persecution of Christians with the Edict of Milan. His support altered the spiritual landscape of Europe and helped transform Christianity into a major world religion. Constantine also made a decision that permanently shifted the empire's center of gravity. He established a new capital in the old Greek city of Byzantium and renamed it Constantinople. This location offered better defense, richer resources, and closer connections to eastern frontiers. As Constantinople rose in prominence, the western half of the empire weakened. After Constantine's death, the empire was divided again. The east remained strong, wealthy, and urbanized, while the west faced increasing hardship. A mix of political weakness, economic decline, and military strain eroded the Western Roman Empire. Heavy taxes burdened its citizens. Corruption undermined leadership. The army relied more on foreign mercenaries who lacked loyalty to Rome. Meanwhile, pressure from migrating tribes intensified. The arrival of the Huns in Europe pushed groups like the Visigoths, Vandals, and others into Roman lands. The empire struggled to control the movement of these peoples. In 378, the catastrophic defeat at Adrianople shattered Roman confidence. The Visigoths later sacked Rome in 410 CE, shocking the ancient world. The Vandals struck in 455. Provinces in Britain, Gaul, Spain, and North Africa slipped away. By the mid-5th century, the Western Empire existed in name more than reality. Authority rested in the hands of powerful generals, while emperors became symbolic figures with little real control. The final blow fell in 476 CE when Odoacer, a Germanic chieftain, deposed the last Western emperor, a young boy named Romulus Augustulus. Odoacer did not claim the imperial title. Instead, he sent the imperial insignia to the emperor in Constantinople, signaling that the Western throne was no more. Though the Western Roman Empire fell, the Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, endured for nearly 1,000 years. It preserved Roman law, culture, and administration while adapting to new challenges. The legacy of Rome lived on not only in Byzantium but throughout Europe. Latin evolved into the Romance languages. Roman engineering influenced architecture for centuries. Roman legal principles shaped legal systems around the world. Concepts of citizenship, senates, and balanced government inspired later generations, including the founders of modern democratic states. The Catholic Church carried forward Roman traditions, preserving knowledge through the Middle Ages. Rome's physical empire may have crumbled, but its empire of ideas continued to shape the world long after the last emperor fell. To understand the roots of the Western world, one must understand the rise and fall of Rome, a story of ambition, innovation, conflict, and enduring influence.